daily lives, that will change history, 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 that will change history. That will be the most beautiful day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by, for tuning in tonight for our Ukraine War Report for day 148 of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Current date is July 21st, 2022. It's now the 22nd in Ukraine, so I could say good morning, Ukraine, and good morning to everybody that is in Europe. Good evening to everybody in the Western Hemisphere. We're going to get everybody caught up on what's been going on over the past 12 to 24 hours in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. We'll start with going through our primary headlines like we usually do, and then after that is completed, we'll hop over to our community aggregated news from our Situation Room over on the Discord server. After that, we will hop over to our open source reports from resources like liveuamap.com, amongst others, and get everybody caught up on the individual reports coming out of Ukraine over about the past 12 hours. We're going to get right into it and get you guys caught up on the main headline topics here. But before we do so, if you haven't already, please hit that like button. Best way to get the algorithm's attention. If you like this content, share this stream. Best way to get this information into the hands of more people. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to get notified when new videos or streams go live. It's also the only way to join our live chat over on the YouTube channel. If you're tuning in on Twitch, thank you guys so much for stopping by this evening. If you haven't already, hit that follow button. Best way to get notified when new streams go live over there on Twitch. So again, without further ado, we will get right into our primary headlines for this evening. Of course, our main breaking story and the title of this stream tonight is the UK has announced its latest package of weaponry being sent into Ukraine. We're going to cover that in more detail later in the show. Starting with our primary headlines, though, the Russian Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline has restarted with gas flowing from Russia to Germany after maintenance, according to data viewed this morning. A Nord Stream spokesperson said, quote, "It's working," without specifying the amount of gas currently being delivered. If Gazprom resumes gas deliveries at 40% of the capacity before the maintenance break, Germany will narrowly scrape through the winter without shortages, modeling by the Kiel Institute for the World Economy suggests. Russia's foreign minister has said Moscow's military tasks now go beyond the eastern Dawnbass region in Ukraine to permanently occupy broad swaths of southern Ukraine as well. Sergei Lavrov said Russia may seek more territory along the front lines in Ukraine, calling it a buffer against U.S.-supplied HIMARS rocket artillery systems. Now the geography is different, Lavrov said. It's not just Donetsk and Luhansk, it's Kherson, Zaporizhia, and a number of other territories, he said in that statement, which was given Wednesday, I believe. Russia has shut down the idea of resuming peace talks with Ukraine, accusing it of being undeserving of, quote, serious attention from serious people. Lavrov said the previous sit-down proved Ukraine had no desire to discuss anything in earnest. That was a direct quote from him. He continued to say they simply will never be able to articulate anything that would deserve the serious attention of serious people. Again, that was his direct quote there. Peace talks don't make any sense in the current situation, he added. At least 2 people have lost their lives and 19 injured in an attack on Kharkiv, according to the region's governor, Ole Syniehubov. He posted on Telegram to say that the injured included 1 child and that 4 people are, quote, in serious condition. Russian forces have destroyed 2 schools in Donetsk towns of Kramatorsk and Kostantinivka overnight. This came from Ukrainian officials earlier today. The State Emergency Services of Ukraine has stated on Telegram that in the Donetsk region, the central market of the city of Bakhmut has also been shelled. Again, big shout out to everybody that's tuning in this evening. Pyrotech, thank you so much for stopping by. Katie Horton, Michelle, Katlinberg, Jillian, Tango, I think I saw you in there as well. Fallen Rays, thank you so much for stopping by. To everybody that is tuning in this evening, again, I thank you for taking some time out of your day. OG Smiley69, I see you there too. Ukton, I see you as well. Again, to everybody that is taking time out of their day to get filled in on what's going on in Ukraine, again, I thank you. We're just getting started with our primary headlines here. Russian and separatist forces continue to attempt small-scale assaults along the Dawnbass front line in the east of the country and are also closing in on Ukraine's second biggest power plant at Avrolohoriska, according to the latest British intelligence report. Russia's Ministry of Defense claims to have shot down one Ukrainian S-25 aircraft, one Mi-8 helicopter, and 5 unmanned drones in the last 24 hours. Again, there's hardly any evidence to show exactly how many of these vehicles they have actually down in the past 24 hours, but the Russian Defense Ministry came out with those claims earlier today. The United States estimates that Russian casualties in Ukraine so far have reached around 15,000, as I reported on last night, and perhaps 45,000 wounded. This came directly from the CIA Director, William Burns. Ukraine's central bank has devalued the hryvnia currency by 25% against the U.S. dollar because of the impact of the invasion by Russia. Officials from Turkey, Finland, and Sweden, meanwhile, will meet in August to evaluate the progress made in fulfilling Ankara's counterterrorism demands from the Nordic countries to lift its veto on their NATO membership bid. Foreign Minister Mevlut Kasunoğlu has said, again, that name there is a little bit of a mouthful, so I'm not sure if I correctly pronounced that. Russian missile strikes in the eastern city of Kiev also killed 3 people on Wednesday, according to local officials there. Regional Governor Ole, who I mentioned a few moments ago, said those killed included a man, a woman, and a 13-year-old boy as he waited at a bus stop. Ukrainian shelling on Wednesday badly damaged the crucial Antonovsky Bridge in Russian-controlled Kherson region of southern Ukraine. Of course, we showed you images on last night's report of the damage to that bridge. Moscow-installed regional authorities have said the bridge is one of only 2 crossing points for Russian forces to territory they have occupied on the western bank of the Dnieper River in southern Ukraine. It has been a key target for Ukrainian forces in recent days, and I made a guarantee in last night's report that I believe we will see more information on this bridge in the coming weeks, as Ukraine most likely will attempt to strike that bridge again. The Ukrainian First Lady, Olena Zelenska, appealed to U.S. lawmakers to provide more weapons to fight Russia's Hunger Games, her quote, in an emotional 15-minute speech to members of the House and Senate. Quote directly from this report, she says, "I am asking for weapons that would not be used to wage war on somebody else's land, but to protect one's home and the right to wake up alive in that home," she said, adding that U.S. weapons could help assure joint great victory. What could be a priceless Fabergé egg has been found on board a Russian oligarch's super yacht seized by U.S. authorities. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco told the Aspen Security Forum on Wednesday it was one of the more, quote, interesting finds in her team has made in recent months. Monaco did not specify exactly which yacht she was referring to, but did say it was currently docked in San Diego Bay after being sailed from Fiji last month. The U.S. will provide 4 more advanced precision HIMARS rocket systems to Ukraine, the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has announced. Quote directly from that report, saying Ukraine needs the firepower and the ammunition to withstand this Russian barrage and to strike back. He said, in addition, the U.S. will provide additional guided multiple launch rocket systems, GMLRS ammunition, which can precisely strike targets up to 80 kilometers or about 50 miles away. The European Union will mobilize a 5th tranche of military assistance of $500 million to further support Ukraine. The EU Foreign Affairs Chief, Joseph Borrell, said the region remains focused and steadfast in its support for Ukraine together with partners. Meanwhile, in some news about Lithuania, I know we've been covering them over the past few weeks here. Lithuania will offer Ukraine additional military support. The Lithuanian Ministry of Defense announced on Wednesday, included in the package will be M13 and M577 armored personnel carriers, as well as ammunition for reserve training. The European Union has set out emergency plans to reduce its gas use amid fears Russia could cut off its supply in winter. It proposed a voluntary target for countries to restrict usage by 15% from August until March, accusing the Kremlin of weaponizing gas exports. Russia is blackmailing us. Russia is using energy as a weapon, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said in a news conference today. South America's Mesquite trade bloc has declined Zelensky's request to address its upcoming summit. Bloc members Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay failed to reach an agreement on the request which he made to Paraguay last week, according to the Deputy Foreign Relations Minister, Raul Cano, who declined to say which states were against it. The European Union has agreed on a new round of sanctions against Russia, this time targeting its gold exports as well as individuals and entities. The move marks the seventh package of penalties and will see assets frozen at Russia's largest bank, with several more names added to the blacklist. Meanwhile, pro-Russian separatist forces have stepped up the forced conscription of men in the occupied areas of Dawnbass. Video has emerged of a Ukrainian woman confronting officials who attempted to force her husband to join the pro-Russian fighters in Donetsk. He doesn't want to go and fight, she said. Nobody wants to fight. We are so sick of you and your war, she said in a statement to those Russian officials. Russian communications watchdog says it's taking steps against the Wikimedia Foundation, which hosts online encyclopedia Wikipedia, for violating Russian laws. The laws are aimed at restricting truthful reporting around the conflict in Ukraine. Again, that wraps up our primary headline topics. We're now going to dive into a little bit more detail, and we're going to start with our community aggregated news from over on the Discord server. Our first post this evening comes from yours truly. It talks a little bit about the UK sending more weapons to Ukraine. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. But before we do, I just want to remind you all, you can find the Situation Room and the posts that we're about to go through, again, over on our Discord server, discord.gg/Nemico. Everybody's welcome to join the Discord server. There's an invite link in the description below. You can follow along with these articles and these reports we're about to show you here on screen. We don't always have time to go through all of them, so it'd be a good opportunity to be able to get further information on what's going on in Ukraine after this report is done. It says here, dozens of artillery guns, hundreds of drones, and tens of thousands of ammunition rounds are to be sent by the UK to Ukraine over the coming weeks. Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said the package would ensure that Ukrainians had the, quote, tools to defend their country from Putin's illegal invasion. The announcement follows last month's government pledge for another £1 billion in military support for Kiev. Russia has said its military focus is no longer limited to eastern Ukraine. The latest support from the UK is set to include more than 20 M109 155mm self-propelled guns and 36 L119 105mm artillery guns, the Ministry of Defense said. A further 50,000 rounds of ammunition for Ukraine's Soviet-era artillery have also been promised, along with drones and at least 1,600 more anti-tank weapons. Our first post this evening, and we're going to start again as we did last night by scrolling up to the top instead of going from the bottom up. One second here while I get caught up in the news posts. We have quite a lot to go through today on the Situation Room. Okay, our first post here comes from Rat Lady on the Discord server. Thank you, Rat Lady, for sending this over. Translation saying, I will not be taken prisoner. Shows here Ukrainian serviceman armed with a pretty significant sniper rifle there, ready to go to work. Again, the translation here says, I will not be taken prisoner. Our next post here also comes from Rat Lady. She had a few there, so I wanted to see which one was more relevant here. This is another video of the strike in Kherson. Lots of secondary explosions as ordnance cooks off. I believe this was the same strike that we saw last night. So it's actually age flagged here, so we won't be able to show that to you guys this evening. But if you'd like to look at that, of course, you can find it in the Discord server. I'll try one more time here. Oh, yeah, okay, so both of those links are age restricted at this time, so I'd have to review that before we can show it to you. Kayuka, with our next post here, says, first report of the day, and I have something big for you all. I'll open up all three of these that he has. He has a few here. One from Ukraine Now Media, the other from Haynes, Deborah, and the last one from Forbes. So we'll look at those in order here. First from Ukraine Now. Again, keep in mind this is an unverified account. It says here from Politico, General Charles Brown, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, has hinted that Americans might soon send Western-made fighter jets to Ukraine. Again, we're waiting to get more concrete information on this, but we will bring that information to you when we receive it. This is actually more information coming from a verified account here to Deborah Haynes on Twitter, saying the U.S. would be open to discuss giving its A-10 Warthog ground attack aircraft to Ukraine. Really quickly, I have talked about this since the start of the war. If there's one weapon system which would demoralize these Russian forces more than anything, is the A-10 Warthog ground attack aircraft. The U.S. Secretary of the U.S. Air Force has indicated. Frank Kendall listed the aging warplanes as among those the Air Force will be ditching to focus more money on modern programs. Again, the A-10s, I believe, would be highly effective in the war in Ukraine, or mostly effective, I would say, against demoralizing these Russian troops. I guess we'll give Forbes what they want here, and we'll temporarily disable our ad blocker. Go ahead and refresh this here. U.S. Air Force General says the West may send jets to Ukraine after all. It says here on the top line, Western countries could provide the Ukrainian Air Force with jets and pilot training. The U.S. Air Force's Chief of Staff said on Wednesday an idea that would significantly ramp up Western assistance to Ukraine as it fights off invading Russian troops. The military officials say no firm decisions have been made yet. If there's one weapon system that I believe would help win this war, it is not only just your standard interceptor fighter jets, but those A-10 ground attack aircraft would be highly effective at demoralizing those remaining Russian troops in Ukrainian territory. As Fallen Rays says in the chat, yes, Ukraine needs air superiority. That would definitely turn the tables here in this ongoing war. Our next post here, again, comes from Kayuka. This comes from Kiev Independent on Twitter here. It says here, the mayor reports overnight explosions near Russian-occupied Melitopol. According to Melitopol Mayor Ivan Fedorov, a large fire broke out on the eastern outskirts of Melitopol, Zaporizhia Oblast, following explosions that were heard around midnight. Our next post here, again coming from Kayuka. This is today's Ministry of Defense intelligence report from the United Kingdom. From the Ministry of Defense of the United Kingdom. Go ahead and read this off for you guys. Russia and separatist forces continue to attempt small-scale assaults along the Dawnbass front line. Russian forces are likely closing in on Ukraine's second biggest power plant at Voloriska, 50 kilometers north of Donetsk. Russia is prioritizing the capture of critical national infrastructure such as power plants. However, it is probably also attempting to break through at Voloriska as part of its efforts to regain momentum on the southern pincer of its advance towards the key cities of Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. We've talked about these pincer movements, very common Russian tactic here that they've been using since the start of the war to encircle Ukrainian troops. And some more news from a rat lady. This actually was posted by FoxNews.com. This talks about the Senate urges Pentagon to consider. Okay, all right. Give me a second here while we, again, disable the ad blocker here. Dang you, Fox News. Deploying warplanes to Ukraine. Fighter pilot highlights an urgent need. A bipartisan group of senators this week urged the Pentagon to consider deploying warplanes to Ukraine as it continues to grapple with Russia's months-long deadly war. In a letter led by Senator Dan Sullivan, a Republican from Alaska, to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Miley, a bipartisan group of 6 senators urged the Department of Defense to consider fourth-generation fighter aircraft and necessary flight training to be included in upcoming military aid packages. Our next post here comes from Rat Lady. This shows total combat losses, an estimation, I should clarify, of total combat losses since the beginning of the war with Ukraine. So in that report we had from the CIA, they estimate around 15,000. In this report here, again, coming from, I believe this is from Ukrainian information, if I'm not, yeah, so this is from the Armed Forces of Ukraine and their estimates. They're estimating that around 38,850 servicemen, Russian servicemen, have been killed in the war. Around 116,550 have been wounded, and about 1,000 have been taken as prisoners of war. Again, these are estimates, and I like to take all estimates coming from all sides with a grain of salt. As I've said before, the best way to get a good idea of what those actual numbers should look like is to run your averages between what the Russians are saying, what the Ukrainians are putting out, what Western intelligence are putting out. Take all those numbers and run your average, and that's most likely what we're looking at. But you won't see a concrete number on these losses till the end of the war. Pyrotech coming at us with our next post here, coming from Keeve Post on Twitter. Again, a verified Twitter source. It says here in the first half of our exclusive interview, as of co-founder Georgy Kuravakishvili, again, that's a mouthful there, addresses the accusations of propaganda directed at the world-revered battalion he helped create. Watch the full interview on our website. Again, I'll play you guys the 48-second clip here from this report. Let's go ahead and get that up for you guys now. We're going to mute our audio. We have some audio coming out of Kharkiv. We're going to mute that so I can play this for you guys now. Got to unmute this here. Okay. You guys should be able to hear this now.
As you know, and most of the people know, that Azov was gathered by football fans, called the hooligans. It's a young kids who actually are football fans, and they gathered in one so-called team around Andrei Beletsky, who was actually founder of the Azov movement. There was one biggest minus that young kids were not trained to be soldiers or fighters. There was a not exactly good idea, but there was another chance. We trained, at the same time we fought. So it was quite difficult. A lot of guys with bright ideas, so not corrupted, not spoiled. So we wanted to be a future base of the future Ukrainian armed forces. So for that, you need to be an example. As you know,
All right, guys. So our mic was muted there on accident. Sorry about that. Again, so ending on a little bit of a positive note here tonight. Our last post comes from Kayuka. It talks about a 300-meter vodka pipeline was just discovered in Ukraine. The makeshift pipeline was being used to transport bootleg alcohol out of Ukraine into neighboring Moldova. Again, apologies there for that sound trouble there, but it looks like we're back now. An illegal vodka pipeline has been discovered by a group of patrolling Ukrainian border officials near the southeastern city of Podolisk. I couldn't make this up if I wanted to, you guys. According to the Ukrainian government, the pipeline was used to transport bootleg alcohol from Ukraine into Moldova. 300 meters of polyethylene pipe stretched from the state border underground in the direction of a private home of the 32-year-old citizen of Ukraine. The Ukrainian government said in a statement previously the discovered highway was used for illegal transfer of alcohol to Ukraine from the Transnistrian segment of Moldova, the Moldovan-Ukrainian border. Again, for those that don't know, the Transnistrian region there is a pro-Russian breakaway region of Moldova that we have mentioned multiple times on the show since this war has began. There's been possibility of their involvement for a while now. This is, I think, the latest information we have out of Moldova, though, and again, this isn't the only. It proves that this isn't the oil pipelines are not the only pipelines here exporting goods out of Russia and Ukraine into the rest of Europe, but Ukraine is trying to get its vodka out into Moldova, into that Transnistrian breakaway region. Again, the pipeline has been discovered, though, and most likely shut down. Doompie says they should do that with the grains. Well, I believe they would if grain could flow as a liquid. Katlenberg says here an oatmeal pipeline. That might work. That might work, possibly. You'd have to have a pretty big pipeline, though. I wonder if you could actually suspend grain within water and then dry it after. Like, pump it down the pipeline and then extract the water from it afterwards and process it. Maybe. I'm not a grain expert or food nutritionist or anything by any stretch of the imagination. That caps off our community updates for tonight. Of course, we don't always have time to go through all of them. So if you guys would like to look at all of today's community aggregated reports, you can find them over in the Discord server. Unstinkable chimes in, says grain doesn't like water, tends to sprout roots. That's right. That's right. Doompie with says with a lot of air, you should shoot it right through. Yeah, that could be possibly a possible solution. I don't think that's what they're going to end up deciding to do, though. Of course, we have had some progress in those grain exports being freed up from these Black Sea ports. We'll see in the coming weeks if that comes to fruition. We're now going to hop over here to our open source reports from liveuamap.com. We're going to start here at the 13-hour mark and get everybody caught up on the individual reports that have happened over the past 12 to 13 hours. 13 hours ago here, it says, as a result of today's shelling 2 districts of Kharkiv by the Russian troops, 3 people lost their lives and another 23 were injured. Kharkiv Regional Prosecutor's Office reports. You can see here a picture of some of the emergency workers investigating the aftermath of those strikes. Eight hours ago, destruction in Kramatorsk as a result of Russian shelling today. You can see where that was located on the map here, and I believe we have an image here from Telegram. Actually, it's coming at us from Twitter of some of the destruction of those buildings today. Again, this is Kramatorsk. Today, Ukrainian city in Donetsk region, the Russians have destroyed an entire street in Kramatorsk. As Tony Wilson mentions, World War III is a go now that they have shut off the vodka to Transnistria. Possibly. I imagine those Transnistrians aren't going to be very thrilled to know that their vodka shipments have been shut off. 5 hours ago here, advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine advises Russian troops to leave Kherson now. And what could arguably be looked at as a big ball statement there by the advisor of the Office of the President of Ukraine, basically just giving the Russians a chance to leave Kherson before the metaphorical shit hits the fan in that region. Again, sorry for my French there. Again, you can see here this post here talking about that press release, also showing an image of the destroyed Vinistia Bridge. Possibly, once they destroy those bridges, the Russian troops will not have an opportunity to leave as quickly, to evacuate as quickly as they will need to when the Ukrainians start their counteroffensives in that region. 4 hours ago, in reaction to Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, the EU has adopted new sanctions. The related documents are published in the official journals L193 and L194. I believe I mentioned a bit of content on that earlier, talking about those new sanctions. 4 hours ago, Ukrainian Foreign Ministry says the United Nations led efforts to reach a grain export agreement. Again, we're still waiting to see those ships start moving in the Black Sea. We have some other information here. The U.S. welcomes the agreement in principle brokered by the UN, Turkey, between Russia and Ukraine to allow the safe transport of Ukrainian grain from blocked ports, but is focused on holding Russia accountable for implementation and getting the grain to the world. Again, that grain is still yet to be moving out of those ports. We heard some reports that that there was some ships starting to move, but that Russian blockade is still in effect in the Black Sea, and it's going to be, I think, some time before we really see that grain moving out of those ports. Capping off our open source reports here tonight, it says 2 hours ago, explosions were reported in Nikopol as a result of MLRS shelling. You can see where that's located here. Nikopol has been bombarded from across the water here for many weeks now. And again, we have a video here, I believe, to show you from Telegram. This you can hear the air raid sirens there and some explosions in Nikopol. Again, that about caps off tonight's open source reports. We're going to end the show with a little bit of a Q&A session. If you haven't already, hit that like button. Best way to get the algorithm's attention. Share this stream with your friends and family. Best way to get this information out there in the hands of more people. Subscribe if you would like to join the chat, and best way to get notifications on the channel when new videos and streams go live. Once you've done that, sound off in the live chats, both on YouTube, Twitch, and Discord, depending on where you're tuning in from. And let us know how you're doing, where you're tuning in from, and any questions you have on the current situation in Ukraine or any comments you have, and we will read those off in the live chat now. Head back over to our newsroom here. As Joni Rasanean, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, says Elon Musk needs to build an antimatter bomb. That might be a good business opportunity for Mr. Musk. I'm not sure how well that would work out in Ukraine for the Ukrainians, or really anybody, as I believe an antimatter bomb would probably not be a very productive step forward. It'd be a productive step for the Ukrainians in getting the Russians out of their country, but I don't think anybody wants to use a nuclear device. Hugo, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. He says, what weapons can they supply Ukraine to strike Moscow? Well, the U.S. has stated previously that they don't necessarily want that to occur. They don't want to supply weapons to Ukraine for them to strike targets on Russian territory necessarily, especially targets of such importance as Moscow. However, I believe there are a lot of officials that would like to see this happen. As for the weapons themselves, some of those longer-range HIMARS systems might be able to reach Moscow. Some of the longer-range munitions that are used for those HIMARS, if positioned properly along that Ukrainian border, might be able to reach Moscow. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not a weapons expert here. However, some ballistic missile systems or some cruise missile systems most definitely would be able to hit Moscow from Ukrainian territory. So you never know. We might eventually see strikes like that. We have seen strikes in Russian cities, Belgorod being a big one, as a lot of missiles are launched from Belgorod. LB Person, referring to the Elon Musk comment, says he will likely make electric grenades. If only, if only. Kallenberg says, there is that, UK. Trap them, force them large to surrender of troops. It's a big tactic of the Russian forces to conduct those pincer movements. As we've seen, they've done this multiple times where they attempt to surround Ukrainian forces. For instance, Mariupol was a really good example of that. They surrounded those Ukrainian forces at that Avastal steelworks factory, and then they basically, in medieval siege style, choke off the supplies heading in, choke off people evacuating out, and they're able to basically get those forces to submit eventually, or they destroy them. The Ukrainians definitely could pull off a similar tactic here in the south of the country if they're able to take out some of those bridges, so that those Russian forces are unable to retreat. However, time will tell if they're able to pull off a maneuver such as that. As Katlenberg responds to Hugo's comment about the weapons that could hit Moscow, Katlenberg says, hopefully just hammers for Ukrainian troops to take down the Kremlin brick by red brick. Katlenberg, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you so much for stopping by. AJ with a question here says, do you believe Russia/Ukraine will come to some kind of truce or ceasefire soon? Well, AJ, that's a question that has been posed by a lot of intel analysts over recent months. Personally, I don't believe that's going to happen anytime soon. I believe this war, unfortunately, is going to last into the fall, possibly even into the winter. It doesn't look to be ending anytime soon, especially as both sides have said that peace talks are off the table at the moment, with the way that Russia has been conducting itself in Ukraine. And with the way that Russia views NATO and the way that NATO is conducting itself in Ukraine, I don't think this is going to end anytime soon, unfortunately. I would like it to, and many of us would like to see this war end today. There's a lot of things that would have to go into it. There's a lot of things that would have to occur for peace talks to occur, for this war to come to an end. Tango Down with a comment here that almost made me lose my composure here. He said, antimatter bomb won't matter. That's a good one. That's a good one, Tango Down. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and keeping an eye on the chat there, Tango. As always, it's good to have you on board. Uktin says the Russians got what they asked for. They will soon find that it is not what they want. They should eat every last bite and lick the plate. Well, Uktin, thank you so much for that, for those remarks there tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. John Clancy says, need drones that can pick up one tank mine and drop back on the Russian tanks. They do have drones that have been dropping munitions, mortars, grenades, all sorts of stuff. I don't think I've seen a drone pick up an anti-tank mine yet. That might be worth looking into. Katlenberg says Ukraine could always build cruise missiles. That's very true. I'm sure that they have some in their stockpiles of weapons. I haven't seen them use too many of them yet. I think they've used a few, if I'm not mistaken. However, we'd have to look at some more details to get confirmation on that. Tom Ferret, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Tom, he says he's tuning in from Spain. Haven't been listening recently, to be fair. Have you heard from Mehmet? Are you still keeping in contact? Is he still in Kiev? If so, what's he doing? So I actually haven't talked to Mehmet for a little while. Last I heard, he was still in Kiev. He was looking to leave the country. Again, he was moving from Kiev. I haven't talked to him recently. I do plan to have him on the show eventually again to kind of give a little interview and ask him how things have been going for him in Ukraine. I'll be contacting him at some time here soon to get updates for you guys on how he's been doing. You can always go follow his Twitter, or sorry, not his Twitter. Well, actually, he has a Twitter too. You could follow him on Twitter, but you could follow him on Twitch. I don't think he has his YouTube channel up and running yet, or if he does, he's not currently using it. He's been using Twitch, though. I know he goes live on Twitch quite often. If you guys want to get updates on what's been going on with Mehmet, best place to do that is his Twitch channel. Go follow him on there. He streams quite often. He likes to play he streams video games and stuff over there on Twitch. I bet he would love to have you guys. Tell him that Nemico sent you and show him some love. Little Dickens, too, says, as a history nerd, I'd hate to see the Kremlin destroyed. Well, I don't think a lot of Ukrainians would currently agree with you, but I would imagine that, yeah, there's probably a lot of history buffs out there that would be like, let's oust the government but keep the building. But for a lot of Ukrainians, the infrastructure of Moscow is a vile disgrace to what it means to be Slavic and what it means to be Russian, I believe, at the moment, at least for most Ukrainians. Katlenberg, thank you so much for the super chat there, saying howdy. Katlenberg, again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Joni Rossinen says, how many nuclear missiles in Ukraine now? I'm not aware of any nuclear missiles in Ukraine at this time. John Clancy says there are thousands of 22-pound anti-tank mines brought in by Russia. Yeah, that actually, I wonder if that's something that they might have thought. I mean, I think those anti-tank mines are probably a little sensitive to movement and just, I'm not sure how they would arm them. That's probably the issue there, is getting them to arm and then being able to drop them from a drone without blowing themselves up while they're, lifting that munition up into a firing position. I don't know. I do know I have seen them used. They've used hand grenades and mortars to quite some degree of success. Uktin at Scylla says the Russians will look to pivot at some point. What might bring that about? So I've talked about this a few times on the show, and the Russian forces in Ukraine currently will eventually pivot to other objectives once they have fully capped the Dawnbass. Now that we've seen, again, in those press releases over the past few days, they've announced that they're going to push even farther because of these longer-range HIMARS missile systems, that Russia feels that they're at more of a threat from these longer-range systems, and so they need to kind of have more of a buffer zone. It's possible that we're going to continue to see this grind westward by the Russian forces in the east of the country, in the Donbass region. But then eventually, I most definitely expect them to pivot. Once they have captured those objectives, they will most likely pivot to the south of the country. Eventually, I mean, they have taken Kherson. They've taken taken everything almost up to Mykolaiv. I know the Ukrainian forces have counterattacked and taken back some of that territory, but it's possible that they will pivot down to the south and try to move further westward, possibly even as far as Odessa, to landlock Ukraine. I've talked about this many times on the show. It doesn't seem very likely in the current state of things, but it's always a possibility. You can't put anything past the Russians. As we've seen, they've surprised intel analysts almost every step of the way here in both overestimation, in terms of overestimation and underestimation. For instance, a lot of intel analysts earlier in the war, especially like in the first days of the war, thought that for sure Russia was going to be able to stop right into Kiev and take over the capital of Ukraine, and basically, so not only did the Russians believe that they were going to be able to capture Ukraine in a very short amount of time, specifically the capital city of Kiev, but most Western analysts thought this as well. And so another surprise was when they pulled out of the northern regions. Okay, that was another thing that surprised analysts. Every step of the way, things like just their ability to wage this war of attrition on the Ukrainian civilians, by attacking residential targets. That's been a surprise to a lot of intel analysts early on. They thought they were going to be more precise and more strategic with their strikes. Now we're seeing this very brutal, bloody war, this bloodbath, this kind of war of attrition that Russia is waging on not the Ukrainian government, but the Ukrainian people themselves and its infrastructure. How they've conducted themselves every step of the way has been surprising. Okay, using certain weapon systems in certain areas when they should be doing something else, using conscripts instead of Russian forces. There's a lot of things that were again, kind of plot twists there, so to speak, as this war has carried on. I do think that, again, there will come a point where they do pivot to other objectives from the east. They'll move those forces, majority of them, to the south, possibly. We've also talked about the possibility of Belarus getting involved in another offensive being opened up in the north of the country. That's less likely than I think them pursuing their objectives in the south. So again, only time will tell how this is going to go. Jillian Lipp says, I don't believe that the Russians will keep fighting in another cold winter war, and a lot of people have speculated the same. However, a lot of intel analysts believe that the Russians will, over the course of the winter, they will dig in along this front we're seeing on the map behind me. Okay, so this eastern contact line where you see all these strikes here, by the time winter comes, if wherever this line falls, we will most likely see a dramatic pause in conflict. I mean, there will still be exchanges of fire over the winter months, no doubt about it. However, we're speculating that we're going to see kind of a pause in fighting, and the Russians are going to heavily dig into that territory, and the Ukrainians are worried about this. The Ukrainians want the war to be ended before winter, because if they don't, if the Russians are given that chance to be able to dig in, they won't be able to. The Ukrainians won't be able to successfully carry out a counteroffensive to retake this territory come the springtime, because the Russians will be so dug in at that point. So that's been a primary concern by the Ukrainian forces in the recent weeks. AJ says, hey, Nemico, thank you for everything you do. Been on your Discord since late February. Even though a lot of people have dropped off since the start, I'm still in there every day and active. Please don't stop. Thank you so much, AJ. Yeah, I know a lot of people, again, even the mainstream media has almost completely stopped covering the war in Ukraine. We expected this to happen early on. We expected there to be what we call war fatigue, especially in the Western media. And that's what we have seen exactly carry out in recent weeks and recent months here is, the Western media, for the most part, isn't even covering the war in Ukraine anymore. I mean, of course, there are still some news agencies covering it in small amounts, but the amount of coverage we saw in the initial days of the war, the initial weeks of the war, has completely dropped off. However, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, we're going to be here right until the very end, bringing you guys updates on what is going on in Ukraine. Katlenberg says it's a weight problem for drones. A couple of pounds, sure. 20 pounds needs much larger drone. Much larger. Yes, it's very true. Again, that could be contributed to why they haven't tried using some of those more heavier anti-tank mines and stuff for those drones. Again, I think another thing is arming them and having them not explode while in transit would be a challenge for an anti-tank mine. Or I'm not exactly sure how that all works, but I could see that being an issue. As Katlenberg says here, yes, sealing off Ukraine from the Black Sea would be Russia's end game or close enough. And that's what I've said since the start of this war. They could get away with not taking Kiev, with not taking those capital cities, the capital city of Kiev. They could leave the north of the country alone. But once the Dawnbass is captured, I do think that they will try to further push westward to Transnistria, to that breakaway region of Transnistria, which you see on the left side of the map here, shaded in red over here. That's Transnistria. So this little gap of territory here where we have Odessa, they could push further westward after they've captured all of their objectives in the east of the country. Tom Ferret says apologies for being completely out of the loop, but haven't had much news recently. How is the Russian offensive on Kiev? Have they got through the Ukrainian defenses much? Is it still their priority? So for those that don't know, the Russian forces pulled out of the northern regions a few months back. So if you look here, Tom, on the map, you'll notice these areas that are blue. These are areas that the Russian forces had moved into before and occupied, but now have since been taken back over by the Ukrainians. So there are no Russian forces here in the north of the country and around the capital city of Kiev, no longer. Their primary goals are being focused on here in the east of the country, in the Donbass region, and in the south of the country here down by Kherson and Zaporizhia Oblast. As Doompie says, as I was talking about here a moment ago, they will make their defenses stronger at that line. Yes, over the winter, that's most likely what we will see if this war is continuing. We'll see kind of pause in the conflict while Russia basically barricades themselves along that conflict line. Doompie also coming in clutch as usual with our weather forecast for Kiev, Ukraine. 0400, 14 degrees centigrade, mostly cloudy. Northwest winds 12 kilometers an hour. Sunrise 0510. Sunset 2057. I feel like those winds have been the same every weather report for the past week or so, Doompie. Thank you, as always, Doompie, for providing us that weather report in the live chat for Kiev, Ukraine. Jay Gravel, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Always nice to see a new face, but I think you've been here before. He says, "I'm still with you. I do like all you do for us. Please keep up the fantastic work." Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Shake the Hand says, "What effect will winter have on battery-powered drones?" I would imagine quite a bit of an effect, especially ones that are using any type of lithium battery technology. However, there's a lot of drones that are actually petrol-powered that they would be using. Again, I'm not a drone expert or a military equipment expert, but I believe that would probably have an effect. As Katlenberg says here in response to LB, Katlenberg says, "I think the situation is more dangerous than the world ever faced during the Cold War." And I would agree with that. And I think a lot of Intel analysts agree with it as well. The situation that we're in now is, I think, more volatile than even at the height of the Cold War. Arguably, the Cuban Missile Crisis was a big deal. But right now, what we're seeing in Europe is unprecedented. As Tom asks, okay, thank you. So no more offensives from Belarus. Well, there's always the possibility of an offensive launched from Belarus. We've talked about this before. I think it'd be more likely that if Belarus got involved, that they would be supporting Russian forces in the east of the country instead of heading down from the north of the border towards like Kiev again. I don't think we're going to see that. I think that's very unlikely. Good word, volatile, says Katlenberg. That sums it up. Yes, volatile. It's a very, I would say, very accurate term to describe the situation. Benny Hill, thank you so much for the support there. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, brother. Says, keep on dancing, brother. I'll go have a dance right after we're done here with tonight's live report. Uktin Atsila says 100 seconds to midnight before the war. Yes, we're at the closest, I believe, to midnight that we've ever been, actually, is 100 seconds, the nuclear doomsday clock. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this evening for our Ukraine live report for day 148, a number that every day that I wake up is continuing to grow, and it's another day that the good people of Ukraine have to deal with this constant onslaught, this constant siege from the Russian forces. Hopefully it'll be over soon. I wish we could be here under better circumstances. Nonetheless, though, I thank all of you for taking some time out of your day to get filled in on what's going on. Meet us back here tomorrow night to cap off the week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, we do reports every weekday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's also 3 a.m. Ukraine time. If you're looking for any of the links to anything, any of our sources, anything at all, you can find it in the description below. If you can't find it there, you can find it over on our Discord server at discord.gg/Nemico. I believe it's also discord.com/invite/Nemico. You can find an invite link to that in the description below to make it easy on you. After this report is done, as usual, we upload it to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Nemico Network for everybody that missed it or everybody that wants to go ahead and re-watch it. Miss Tiger Eye 912, I see you popping in the chat there now, says, wait, I missed it. That's too bad, Miss Tiger Eye. We started right around 8. Actually, I think it was like 7:50. So we started a little bit earlier tonight. But nonetheless, Tiger Eye, don't worry. Well, I'll be uploading it right to the YouTube channel right after this is done. And again, as usual, when this is done, we will be launching our 24/7 Ukraine cam / report stream for everybody to continue on chatting in the live chats. So don't go anywhere. We'll be putting that right back up for you guys after this is over. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button. Best way to get this the algorithm's attention, get this information out to more people. Share this stream if you like this content, and subscribe. Best way to support the channel is to subscribe. It's the best way to get notified when new streams or new videos come out. Of course, make sure to hit that notification bell and to hit that all button. It's the only way to ensure that you will actually get notifications. If you've hit that all button and you're still not getting notifications, YouTube has asked me to let you guys know to submit a user feedback report. At the bottom of the page, anywhere on YouTube, there's a little button that says submit feedback. Make sure you include in there that you are not getting notified of videos from our channel. YouTube has actually been pretty good at helping me out with that over the past week here, and they did admit to me that they were having actually some issues with their system. And so I know a few of you are actually getting notifications now, so I hope that problem has been fixed for the most part. Nonetheless, make sure you're subscribed and make sure you hit that notification bell. I think that about sums it up, everybody. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Epi, I saw you tuning in there in the chat. I can't forget to shout out to you, Epi. As always, it's great to have our Scotsman in the live chat, keeping everybody on their toes. To everybody, if I missed you, thank you guys so much for stopping by tonight. Until next time, you are watching Nemico Network.
Something that will change our daily lives. That will change history. That will change history.